Okay, so we're at the bench. We're going to take a little look at this board. There's probably quite a lot of sound to deal with because we've got the desoldering tool over here warming up, the fan over there going because we don't want too much lead going through us, so we're going to be blowing the smoke over there. So hopefully you can still hear me. So first of all though, we're going to actually do a baseline to make sure we are indeed getting a short on this board. We're pretty sure we are, but it's always good to check just before you make sure. So we're going to set the multimeter to continuity mode. There we go. And we know that these first two are ground pins and the last two are 5 volts. So if we set it to being making a noise, that would have been handy. Right, there we go. It's a fairly straight short to ground, but yeah, again, not much more resistance than the other board. I think there's a conundrum we have to work out here, but that does feel like that's a straight short still. There we go, so that's a ground pin. And that's the same resistance across that chip. So from ground to VCC, yeah, it's a similar level of resistance. Yeah, this board's a conundrum. But anyway, what we're going to do, because we know there's an issue with this, because these tantalums are definitely not healthy. So we're going to remove this board, which we're going to have to desolder to do that. And then we'll test again just to see. I don't think it's going to remove the short, because I think the short is something we're not understanding on this board. Hell's a freeze. Right. Let's turn this board over, because this is connected via what looks like a chip header on this side of the board. It's also got these 2 patch cables, which we're going to take a photo of because otherwise we will never know how they go on. So let's just make sure we get enough of the board in that we know which way it's orientated. Also make sure that this records landscape. So there. We don't have to worry about going down here because we don't intend, you know what, we're going to take a photo anyway, you never know. There we go. And we're not just going to take a photo of it, we're also going to mark the board. So we've got our little paint pen here, and I am just going to mark on this board where the 2 wires go. So it doesn't say which ones are going where, but we at least know where they're supposed to be. So first step is we need to place some fresh solder on there, because this stuff is old and crusty and it will not in any way, shape or form flow very well. But I guess we'll first of all we'll just use some tweezers and remove these cables. They are very taut. Right, come on, I need you to come off. Oh, blimey. What have they done here? Well, I think they may have put it underneath. That's interesting. Okay, that's not going to be easy to remove. What about this one? They've done the same with this one. Yeah, I think it's basically been, they've coiled it around. Oh, it's come off. It did. What have they? Yeah, they've kind of coiled it around. Can we do the same on this one quickly? Come on. The other one came off, you can come off. It does not want to. I'm going to have to remove it though. There we go. Yes, they made a tiny loop in the cable and put it over the pins, which is interesting. Right, a lot of care was done putting that patch cable in place. So let's stick some more solder onto these. Right, it's not very neat, but it doesn't really matter. Let's bring in the desoldering tool. Okay, I'm not convinced that's worked, but let's give the pins a bit of a wiggle test. We don't want to just pull this straight out because we might break the track, so we want to, yeah, these are not moving in the slightest, so that's gonna be interesting. Now there's very little room for them to move actually, so that's not good. Okay, so desoldering these is going to be tricky. Yeah, that's not moving in the slightest, right. That's a pain. Yeah, there's very little room for them to actually move, which is of course a problem when we're trying to desolder them, because we need to get the suction coming from all the way through the board. So okay, we could just try leaving the gun on a little bit longer. But I'm pretty sure that still hasn't cleared that solder out. I don't really want to do this side because that's even more patch cables that we need to resolve. Okay, so we may have to use a different method to do this. And we can rue Sord being this annoying with its construction. Which is a real shame because the rest of the construction of this machine has been very good. It's definitely not sitting inside a... It's quite high up. Which kind of makes me feel that, is this sitting inside something? I can't see a board in there, but let's put some light on it. I can't tell. I can't tell. Is there... I think there's something underneath that blue. If there's a screw and we've missed it and that's the only reason this isn't coming off, then I'm going to be very upset. With myself, obviously. Nope, there isn't. Well, that's kind of good. I was a little bit concerned for a second there. I could see a post coming. I think it's just a post to give this extra. Right. That is not moving. This is a problem. This one's going to be hard to do because there's lots of components around it. And it means another 2 patch cables to remove. Right, well, we need to work this out. Right, so I did decide to take it off from the top in the end, and yeah, I didn't record it because I forgot. Anyway, it's removed. It was a lot easier to do it from the top as well. It came off with very little effort comparatively. We've taken a photo again so we know where these 2 patch cables go. Right, so as I thought, and I'll just show you, it hasn't resolved the short to ground. However, there is much more resistance now. So yeah, it'd be easier if I showed you probably. So the resistance has gone up by a fair margin. So we have either resolved the issue to a point, or we've just removed one of many issues. The bottom board, like I said, also had a short. Well, will look like a short with resistance that was only a bit higher than that, and that board actually functioned fine and everything was working fine. So it may just be how this is designed, which is kind of odd. Maybe there's just very low resistance. I don't know. These modern multimeters are they're not really designed for that. So possibly, I don't know. But we will do some more tests to make sure. There are obviously tantalums to replace, so I need to get the settings for these tantalums. Yeah. Now the problem is there are a lot of tantalums, and once one's gone, I kind of stopped trusting the rest of them. So I may just replace all of them. But then there are tantalums on there. There are caps on here. So we've got this cap here. It looks okay. I'm not seeing any bulging. I'm not seeing any evidence of leaking. It's a Vichy one, so it's a fairly good quality capacitor. There are these filter caps, which they do go, but they're fairly rare. They're just there for filtering. And there are some ceramic caps as well, which again they take longer to go, but they do sometimes go. Now up here we have this, which looks for all and purposes like a clock chip, which means there might be a battery inside there. I can't see any sign of leaking, but you never know. I mean, it'll be dead regardless if it is there, whether it's leaking or not. Yeah, and some resistor networks, they're known to go occasionally. So there are a few things we need to test anyway. Other than that, the board looks like it's in really good condition. I'm not seeing any signs of any kind of corrosion or anything. I literally just saw some white down here and thought, oh my god, no, I've just seen corrosion. No, that's the paint pen that I put on there a little bit earlier. So yeah, there's no signs of corrosion that I can see. There's this, but this is just withering. It's nothing serious. You know what I didn't check? Is there actually anything inside the ports? Sometimes, always check to make sure there's nothing actually bridging things inside ports, because that happens sometimes. No stray bits of metal or anything in there. So yeah, the issue we've got is there are a lot of chips. There's a bunch of memory chips, a little bit of problem with the power supply, and they go, and that would draw the power to ground. There's this chip, this BIOS, which we're going to get off the board and actually get a copy of that. There's some mask ROMs here, which again, maybe we'll desolder those and see if we can copy what's on them. But yeah, other than that, who knows? I guess the first job's going to be to replace those tantalums. Fine. That's going to be the next job. What we'll do now is we'll finish off just by looking at some of the changes we made to the power supply. We're kind of in the final form of that now, I think. It's fairly neat. It's just a case of getting it to fit into the case properly, but that's a lesser issue than getting the thing to work in the first place, so it's fine. Right, see you in a minute. Just before we go to the power supply, actually, we will look at this. So we've desoldered the board, as we said, from the actual main motherboard. We also desoldered some of the worst looking components. Actually, really the only bad looking components, although we'll probably replace most of these tantalums. So yeah, obviously we have the tantalum there, which can't really get much closer than that without and the camera still autofocus, I think. Is autofocus on that? No. Okay. Anyway, yeah, that should be a brown colour. That's very much a black colour, and it's just integrating, so that's definitely gone. We've also got these two resistors as well, which have obviously had some high energy going through them that they weren't expecting. Probably due to the failure of the tantalum, but yeah, still, we have to work out what these values are, and considering the fact all but one of the bands have been burned off, that would be tricky. Don't know. We'll work out. There's ways of working it out. We can work out what's coming in and what's going and where it's going to and what that's expecting, and you can kind of work out what those resistances are. But that's one thing we'll have to do, because we'll obviously have to replace those resistors before we can get anything working on this board. Other than that, I mean, everything seems to be fine. Like I say, though, I'll replace those tantalums just because if one's gone, the chances are the rest are on their way out. Yeah, PLL1, so some kind of logic level thing. I mean, there's lots and lots of logic chips on it. All of this seems to be fairly replaceable if it's gone. They're fairly standard logic gate chips. And up there, that's just an LM318 up here. So that's also a fairly replaceable chip. So at least this board is almost certainly recoverable once we work out what those resistors are. I think the tantalum is the same as this one over here, so I think it's a 4.7 UF resistor, tantalum. Sorry. So yeah, I'll be able to replace that. I've got some coming through in the post actually. So we can't do much with this until we get the extra components, until we work out what those resistors are, but yeah, we'll do that kind of, I'll be doing that next when that comes through. And yeah, it also, they don't look like they're the same value as any others on here, because the brown band is a lot darker than any of the others, which suggests they're not the same kind of resistor, or not the same manufacturer. So yeah, unless that's darkened because of the heat, which is not impossible, I suppose. But yeah, it is neatly burned away the entire centre of the resistor, so you can't see anything about what the rest of the bands are. Yeah, maybe we'll kind of assume that maybe it's the same as some of these other resistors. We'll have to work it out anyway. We'll work out where it's supposed to be connecting. Yeah, and I've got these wires which I had to desolder as well, because they were connected to those resistors and to the center connection point as well. So we have to remember to put those in place. I have taken a photo so we can work out where they're supposed to be. Right, anyway, let's go and take a look at the power supply, and that will pretty much wrap up this episode. Again, not one we've achieved particularly much, but it's all building blocks. Back in a sec. Okay, so here's the power supply. Bit of a mess at the moment, but so we've got, this is our new power block that we're using, and we've got this IEC plug here, which yeah, watch keeps sticking. Watch has got a magnetic band, so it just keeps sticking to the metallic parts of this. And what we've done is we've connected the original power lead cables, including the earth cable as well, handily, into this IEC cable, so we can just plug in using the outside plug now. And that again still goes onto our new board here, which has our outputs for the voltages and also the fan header as well. That all works, and it's really now just a case of working out how we're going to be able to fit this in. We might have to maybe get rid of the fan grill here, which you can't see. There we go. Maybe get rid of the fan grill just because it takes up an extra amount of room. Maybe redesign this so that it's much smaller. We'll see. But anyway, that now it does all kind of fit, and it runs well, as well as it was before, so that's good. And it powers up the fan and everything. So yeah, we're kind of there with the power supply. I'm not sure we're going to be able to fit it in properly, because obviously to do it correctly we're going to have to also include this part, which is the outside part, but it seems unlikely we're going to be able to get all of this to fit into that. Maybe if we manage to make this smaller, or somehow reduce the size of this, maybe we'll take it out of its casing. I don't want to do that, because the casing is it's all designed for the heat dissipation of the components inside, and so whilst we could repurpose the metal shrouding of here, it's all designed to work inside this box. But we could do that. That is an option if we need to go that far. But as it is, it does fit in here, just without the front case on, and with all these cables. Yeah, these cables are the worst part. These cables take up a lot of room. But it does fit. I've cut the other set of cables off, so this also had drive headers coming out of it, and I've cut all those off and taped them up inside, just to get them out of the way. But yeah, it fits and it works. We can use now the power switch and the outside IEC connector to power the thing up. So yeah, once we get it all fit in and it's all going and we manage to fix stuff, I think it will look neat, which is obviously the most important thing. We still also have to work out what the battery to replace this with. I still don't think that's going to be that much of a problem, so I'm not worried about that. And it also, as we saw with the our power on, it does seem to power these boards up, which is good. Right. Well, I think that's everything we can do. I need to also start grabbing these ROMs and start pulling the data off of those, just in case, because I've still not found a good resource for the Sord. There's a Facebook group, but no one seems to ever answer anything on there, so I think getting information for this build is going to be tricky. Right, anyway, let's do a wrap-up. Alright, so another part of the Sord refurbishment finished. We're still, I know it doesn't look like we're making a huge amount of progress, but we're kind of getting all these building blocks into place, as I said earlier. We now have a viable power supply for this system. We have an idea of what's wrong on that board, and we know basically how to fix it as well. We still have this weird phantom grounding going on, which it's an odd one. Probably someone with more experience will be able to work out what that is. I don't think it's that huge amount of problem. I will be testing like all of the resistors and capacitors and tantalums and stuff. I'll be checking all of that stuff and possibly removing them and seeing if the ground goes away. And I need to dump the contents of these EEPROMs as well, because I'm very concerned we're going to lose that. And like I said, finding a resource for this machine is really tricky. Right. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like. If you really enjoyed the video, please hit subscribe. If you didn't enjoy this video or you have something else to say, then please leave it in the comments below. And yeah, please remember to hit the bell icon somewhere up there, so you can be notified of any further videos we make, including obviously extra parts to this. Right. See you next time.